All right. Hello. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to start off this panel by just asking our speakers for different use cases or different case studies from within their own very different businesses of how they used big data and analytics to make their services better and more efficient.
You know, I can kick it off. So I'm with a company called Xandr. It is part of the AT&T family of companies, and we are an advertising company. But how we have created our advertising marketplace is really by using a combination of assets across AT&T. So it's really the data, the consumer insights that we derive from 170 million direct-to-consumer relationships, the distribution through broadband, TV, wireless, retail channels, the technology. We purchased a company called AppNexus a little over a year ago that brings the technology, and then the content through our Warner Media and AT&T TV and TV Now. So you take all of those assets, and how you really make advertising different is how people engage with content. We see them engaging on linear television through your subscription-based services, but also through digital over the top. And so from a brand perspective and wanting to advertise, you want to make sure you extend your reach, whether that consumer is watching on linear or digital, but you also want to manage the frequency so that customer isn't getting hit with multiple advertising. So by using those consumer insights and having the distribution assets, you know, we're able to make sure that we're managing that engagement with the consumer regardless of whether they're on the linear side or the digital side.
Okay. Another case study?
Sure.
Yeah, I work for Condé Nast.
Karthic from Condé Nast.
Please go ahead. Yeah, please.
Sorry. And we are a publisher, primarily in the fashion, travel, and technology space. And we've aggregated a lot of information about user behavior and what content they consume. And about 2 years back, we realized as our audience is aging, they need a lot of healthcare information. So using the data we have and the fact that people are consuming a lot of content, we launched a whole new vertical, which is Condé Nast Health.
Okay, so this actually helped you create new content inside a new vertical. Okay, right.
And we don't have a healthcare magazine or a brand, and we literally used Self, which is much more lifestyle-oriented, to create healthcare information. And that's kind of one of the biggest, fastest-growing businesses within Condé Nast. And just by understanding user behavior and the fact that they have certain healthcare needs, we were able to launch a whole new business.
Cool. Winnie?
Yeah. So we are a company that are helping companies to utilize AI to make better business decisions based on their own data as well as the data that we supplement them with. And so I can give a real example because most of our companies are consumer-facing companies that have a lot of data across the entire user journey with their interaction between themselves and their customers. So nowadays, our product portfolios are built along line to map the entire user journey from the top funnel of user acquisition to the mid funnel of turning your users into loyal users, and then to the bottom of understanding really what your users are wanting right now and what they might want for the next phase of their journey with you. So one of the real example is that like Double 11 is one of the largest online shopping event in Asia. And last year, one of our customers, what they did was they actually used a combination of 3 different products that we offer to drive, like first, a good sales for their events during Double 11. And then after that, they actually continue, because these users are acquired, right? So they continue to using this database to actually engage with their customers through their own channels from, email or SMS or web notification and app notification and all that. And then, finally, the very interesting part is that we have one data science platform that actually enables the customers to understand their customer further. So from there, they actually found most of their users are actually interested in eco-friendly type of topics. So then they just recently kicked off a project that is actually creating I would say, eco-friendly sun blocking creams, which we're very looking forward to see the results from there. So very interesting experience, and through all these, tools, they actually were able to increase not only the return of ROI for themselves, but also the retention of the users increased 80% over time. And also, we're looking forward to new product design based on the data they found from these platforms. Yeah.
So we at Trip Actions, so Trip Actions is a travel management company, a global travel management company. So we help companies manage their travel program. So we use data everywhere. The good thing for us, so we are lucky enough to build our own tech. So from the booking tool to all the way to the expense and support on the go, we have our own travel agents. So we really have a lot of data, and we're really, really focusing on the user. So we bring data and technology, and we're trying to create an amazing user experience. But the example that I would want to show you, to tell you today, is actually something that I'm really, really excited about, is more about how we make our own processes more efficient using data. So one thing that is really critical for us in our sales program is to know how much the company or the prospect spends on travel annually. Because if they spend $100 million a year versus $1 million a year, it's a completely different process, or $50,000 a year. It's a completely different process. But if we don't know, then the process is kind of broken, and it starts here, and then, oh, let me transfer you to the right person, and it's kind of not great for us and not great for the prospect. So we thought, is there a way for us to predict how much this prospect spends on travel annually? And interestingly enough, we managed to do it. So if you think about it, if you think about a company and you know how many employees they have, and you know how many locations they have, and you know how global they are, and you know what type of business they do. Is it a B2B sale, or it's a more of like a consumer play, and you look on a lot of data that we already have in our system of customers that we've talked with. We know a lot about them, and we know how much they actually spend. We put all of that into a machine learning model, more particularly a decision tree, and we can predict how much they spend. So we ran that as an experiment, and we were surprised to see that the accuracy of this prediction is 90% and growing as we get more data. So now the process, as we get a new prospect, is so smooth and streamlined.
Is there ever a discrepancy between how much they were willing to pay and how much they are supposed to be paying based on your algorithm?
So that's the main problem. So a lot of them just don't know at all how much they spend, which is okay. Some of them think they know, which is even worse, because then they give you a number, but reality is 500% different than what they say, which again, it makes the whole sales process more cluttered.
Do you ever run into answers that you get from running your analytics on, and you get an example or a response or that isn't what you'd expected? Have any of you run into that, where you've queried the data and the result is something that was completely outside of what you thought it might be, where you had to make different decisions based on it? Go ahead.
It's a good question. I can speak for... Oh, sorry.
Go on, please.
Go ahead.
Something very interesting that we looked at, with just looking at the data, is we look for correlations between different things in the system. And one thing that is really interesting is company policy, travel policy, how much you're allowed to spend. Are you allowed to fly business? Are you allowed to stay in the 4 seasons, in the 5 stars, etc.? And the NPS, or the Net Promoter Score, or user satisfaction from the program. And we looked for correlations because in the end, as I said, we really are focused on the user. And we know that in the end, to have a successful travel program, you need to have happy users. So it was really important for us to look for what are the different levers in a travel policy that drive a high NPS, or high user satisfaction, versus those that completely drops it down. And it was it was very interesting to see. And then some of it we can actually bake into the product, and some of these insights we actually share with our customers, and we tell them, hey, you should really do this, or you should really do that to make your travelers happy. If they would be happy, you will have better control and visibility into your travel program.
Lori? I think you looked like you had something to say about this.
I was just thinking of some of the things that, we have struggled with as we kind of, is it a surprise or maybe it is just how we
Or at least
evolve.
there's some sort of tension.
Yeah, some sort of tension in how we think about it. And I kind of use the spectrum. Like when we have a consumer, a wireless customer, for instance, that has a dropped call, and we give that customer the ability to identify where they are from a geolocation perspective so that we can determine if there's a problem on the network. So that type of use of consumer data is totally owned by the consumer, but it really helps them improve their product and services. And so that type of situation people get really comfortable with. It's like expected, it's very transparent. But then you start taking insights that you derive from your consumer relationships and you talk about, are there opportunities to monetize that in different ways outside of that direct service relationship? And I remember when we first started talking about big data in 2013, people were even reluctant to use the term big data because they associate it with something bad. But I think when we look at it, we really say, look, put the consumer first, make sure you're transparent. And in the advertising space, we make sure that the consumer knows that, look, if we can use the consumer insights to make our advertising smarter, it should make the advertisings that reach you more relevant, more meaningful, as opposed to the traditional spray and pray approach. And so when we start messaging that to consumers and to the regulators, it starts making people much more comfortable with how we're talking about data and the data insights that we derive.
So there's a difference between coming up with a finding from your big data analytics and then something else entirely with actually getting people to act on it or making decisions on it, whether that's for your clients or for people within your company. Do you ever run into tension with the findings versus their willingness to act?
You mean internally within the company?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Meaning, when I joined Condé Nast about 4 years back, meaning Condé Nast is a 125-year-old company.
Sure.
And when I joined Condé Nast, when I started talking about data models, people thought it was a different kind of a model, like a runway model and a swimsuit model and a data model was so culturally there's a huge difference. And to get people to actually act on trusting data and making decisions on data was a huge challenge from an organizational perspective. And the thing that changed the whole thing for us is to, rather than telling them what to do, have them take ownership of their own data, to say it is your data, tell me what you want me to do, rather than me building engineering solutions to go out and tell them what we think they should be doing. So, and that was one thing. The other big thing that changed significantly within the operation over the last few years is we started looking at marketing internally, because typically when you talk marketing within any publisher or media company, you talk about marketing outside to the outside world. But for us, it was a big part of marketing for us was how do I market to my internal people so they actually can start using data? And that changed completely. So we literally have a whole group of people who take all the insights and talk to the people internally in the organization to get them to start trusting data. And that kind of was a huge difference in the way we operate.
You're actually talking about marketing within your company
within
to
the
get
organization.
them to use big data.
And there is a new win, for example, in certain things that the customer got. It was very important for us to tell our employees first, because that motivates them and starts enabling them to feel like they're part of the solution.
Sure. Winnie, I feel like you would run into this with the AI platforms.
Exactly. So actually, turning data into actionable insight is one of the motivations why we built one of the platforms that we have, the data science platform. So in that platform, what we try to do is to enable the company to give them the AI capabilities internally without building a real AI science team. But of course, I mean, nowadays, some of the data science team within our customer side, they do actually use this to produce a first, like a foundation, and then they build on top of that further. But this platform, what it's supposed to do is actually we help all the customers first to unify the data they have from all the like different consumer sources. For example, from website, from app to their CRM. So we try to unify all these back to one unique user, so the customer can actually utilize their consumer data holistically, so they can understand this person better. And then after that, there will be like build AI model on this platform, which allows like our customers, these companies to figure out what are the key questions they try to address here. For example, if they want to predict people before they would churn, then like they just pick this churn model, and then we help them to predict a list of people who might likely to churn in the coming 3 months or so, and so they can actually do something, take some actions before this happen. So then they can actually output this list of people to, for example, to their own line messengers and like different outlet, like for their market automation tool or whatever, to engage them differently for different purposes. So that's like how we try to address like how to turn data into actionable insight.
Ilan, did you have anything to say, or should
I can add if we have time.
Sure, go ahead.
I think, so for us, it's a lot about scale, because every dollar that we sell, we need to support them, right? You book a flight, you book a hotel, things happen all the time when you travel, then you contact us, and we want to serve you really well. Our SLA is 60 seconds, right? So the question is, how do we use data and technology to really scale this support without keep hiring more and more and more and more travel agents? So one of the things is that what should we be focusing on when we automate stuff? And there was like an internal debate. We all thought that we know what our agents deal with mostly. So when travelers contact us, what's the #1 topic? That's really important, because if you can focus on that and create an environment for the agent that they can solve this issue with 2 clicks, then it will be amazing. And I remember, I will not expose the exact details, but we all assumed one thing, and the reality was that it's just like a flight exchange and flight cancellation is the #1 thing. And so we actually invested a ton of effort on the back office side of things to automate this process. So now it's very simple for the agent. And it was so successful for the agent that we then even rolled it over to the actual travelers. So travelers today can just exchange a flight. And hopefully, they will get a better experience. If they want, they can still contact support. But if they want to do it by themselves, it's there. And if they do it, we can really scale and scale and scale faster. So it's all through data.
Right. My final question was going to be about increased regulation, GDPR, data, trust, but we have a question from the audience that sort of dovetails with that. It says, how do I build trust between my customers, or how to build trust between my customers with their data, how to let them trust that I won't manipulate them and that I will help? And I think this sort of gets to the heart of things like GDPR. How do you create or legislate a trust? Do you have any suggestions how to do so? Especially when it's so scary and there's all these hacks and
you want to avoid that creepy factor that we hear people talk about. But I really think GDPR was just the tip of the iceberg, and it really forced companies, I can speak from an AT&T and Xandr perspective, to really kind of refine and strengthen our data management, and I think all companies really had to. It was difficult. There was a burden to the business to engage, but what it did was really trying to make it abundantly clear what information you have about whether it's a consumer or an employee, so that you have good mechanisms to respond to a consumer or employee request about the data that they have. But I think, one of the things that GDPR, and in the US we're seeing the California Consumer Privacy Protection Act, and just really a patchwork of regulations, it's all trying to get to the point of transparency. And the more you are transparent with your customers, you explain the value exchange whenever you are using data insights, I think it encourages them and gives them more comfort. I think a lot of what we're seeing with regulation is sometimes it's a lack of understanding across the consumer base, as well as perhaps for regulators, and then it's distrust when we see some bad things happening. I mean, one of the things we do at Xandr is to really say how we use data and data insights and how we communicate with our customers in a privacy-centric way is really a market differentiator. And when you do that, we build, by the way, I don't think I'm probably the token lawyer on this panel. I don't believe that solving for GDPR and privacy is a legal problem only to solve. It is a business problem. So you've got to have privacy-centric minded people in your product organizations, governance or data protection really embedded across your technology to really get your business to buy into how important this is and how this can actually expand and give you more opportunities when you build that trust.
Right, so show, don't tell.
Right, exactly.
So I agree to everything Laurie just said. The only thing I'd add from our perspective, privacy and trust is so critical. What we've done is we've said we will not be using data aggregators to give us information because we don't understand the source of that information. So we've said all the data we have, it'll be our own first-party data or certain partnerships we can build with trusted partners. We would not be just buying data off the market to enhance our user's profile, which is kind of what leads to these ads that are retargeting a shoe that follows you forever kind of thing. We don't want to be in that game. So there are certain, I guess, business guidelines you can put in place to enhance the user's trust. And our whole hypothesis here is as we build a trusted relationship with our consumer, it'll pay off in the long term. In the short term, you might have some revenue implications.
Is this something you try to communicate to the customers, or is it just showing?
We just stopped using that in our data management platform. We don't bring in any third-party data into our platform.
And we also very much agree that having clear regulation in this space will actually help the industry to become healthier going forward. And on our side, because we operate a business based on AI, so gaining trust is actually very, very critical because you need to let your customers know what is the data guideline you have internally, how you're going to use their data, and what kind of infrastructure you have in place to keep their data safe with you. So these are all critical things that we are also focusing on top of the local compliance everywhere. Yeah.
Ilan?
Yeah, I think when it comes to trust, you can say, that's my policy. You can say, I will do no harm, I do no evil, and all of these things. But trust is all about how you behave. It's not about what you say. You can say many things, hey, trust me, I'm a good man. But it's really how you are. And so I think, what we really pay attention to is transparency, which I think everyone said, acknowledging mistakes, communicating them, acting on them. So I think that's how you build trust. We have a data protection policy and we share it, but I really don't believe in that. It's everyone in the company knows that it's about transparency. It's about when something goes wrong, we talk about it. We explain, we do an investigation, whatever. So it's really, we pay attention to beyond the policy of the lawyer and the document and all of that. It's a lot about how we behave as a company. And for that, we create full transparency.
Okay. I think that's a great place to stop. Thank you all, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.